we want this to look sexy. Prefabrication is not that, right? Like we
Mhm.
want this building going to look like this, right? And they're grateful that there are some people doing that. And I remember hearing that a lot. Well, we don't want cookie cutter, okay? Like it has to be identical, right? I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be. And they're
Right.
like, what? And I was like, and so then I started like doing some historic, like, okay, like let me understand some construction history behind it. Like what is prefabrication anyway? Like that is a whole nother probably podcast if you've not done yet of who is defining the word prefab, modular, industrialized construction and what fits into those things.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Activating Curiosity. I am Ryan Ware, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. We actually scheduled this some time ago, but I was once told this gentleman is like my lost brother when it comes to prefabrication and prefabrication stories. So I have with me today Josh Mensinger, and he is with Integrity Built, and he has 20 plus years really focusing on offsite construction and prefabrication. So that'll be a lot of our conversation today. But Josh, how you doing?
Yeah, man, it's a really great day. I've made a recent transition, as you just said, integrity built, and so a lot of newness. But the irony is, even though prefab, as we know, is new, it's not, right. And
Right.
so it might be a new company and a new title, that's a little bit higher than I've had previously, but it's really the same stuff, but with a little bit of newness of changing things in. So pretty
Yeah.
exciting time for me, man. So I'm actually doing really great.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad kind of catching you in this transition period for yourself in your new role. We've gotten to talk from some of your past role and just hear a little bit about your story, but I don't want to tell your story. So before we dive into activating curiosity, tell a little bit about your past, kind of what got you into construction, what led you into prefab, or anywhere you want to tell your journey.
No, that's good actually. What got me into construction? I think that's actually ironically the same thing that got me into prefab. California kid, ironically, grew up in the '90s, graduated in '97 from LAUSD, and being a Los Angeles kid, right by the ocean. I mean, just fit the total persona of that. Hair was a
Right.
lot blonder back then, and man, I geeked out, man. It was the IT and internet era, and I was 18 years old, and I got hired on right out of high school as a computer teacher for LAUSD without a college degree because teachers didn't know how to use computers. They didn't know how to run computer labs.
Hmm.
Schools were just getting bonds, right? And our school had the bond, and so I was a part of the team that actually, installed the Cat5 cabling, and I got Windows NT certified before I graduated, and so all that was kind of happening through the school, just so we could actually help our school, our high school, kind of transition. And my parents, all the Texans that kind of hate the Californians that have moved to Texas, I said, well, you can blame them. They started at '98. And I moved out here, and went from the ocean to East Texas, where all the big pine trees, and we had one blinking light and a McDonald's, and there was no computers, man. Just to be honest, there was no work for me with my skill set. Nobody even knew what a Windows NT certification was, and I was like, shit, I have to get back to California as fast as I can get there. How do I make money enough to kind of get there and feel safe, going back? I didn't want to live necessarily in a horrible neighborhood, but I knew I couldn't live by the ocean, at least to
Right.
where my parents had me, And of course, what are you going to do in Texas to get cash right away without, a degree was construction. And man, I first job was commercial roofing, and I was mopping hot tar, and it was the summer, and I was
Hmm.
like, man, there's no way I am gonna do this long term, man. And so I was like, my buddy was like, got me into fire protection, and so I was like, okay, I'm not. So that got me to Dallas Fort Worth, outside of the East Texas roofing company. And so, man, I'm hanging pipe and cutting drops and working for a great Dallas, so that's still actually in business today. But I just knew long term, like it wasn't me. I was this computer guy that loved technology and integration and stuff like that. And before I knew it, a buddy of mine was telling me about this prefabricated um, light gauge metal truss manufacturer that also did metal walls. And so I was
Yeah.
kind of like, Googling and checking about, like carpenters and how much they make. And I'm like, man, that shit's not enough money either. But then I was like, I was willing to hear him out. And he's like, hey, man, sales are different than the field. And I was like, I don't know, am I that guy? Am I not that guy? And I'm pretty dynamic. And so I went to hear the company out, see the software that they were having, the innovation that they were pushing. And man, I was like, okay, this actually feels like something that I can really get involved in where all to be honest, all the shit that I hated about being at a job site, it
Mhm.
was like I loved walking the plant. I loved, sometimes even helping out in the plant, but it was the technology on the inside of the factory that was looking at engineering and how do we engineer a roof truss system that, and how can we be competitive against the other guy besides just being faster? Okay, we're going to use this extra bracing here so that we can drop the bottom chords different. And so I just started working my career in this side of the field. And again, light gauge panelized walls, load bearing light gauge 20 years ago was not heard of. And so I was kind of really on the cutting edge of that. And it was such a great career, man. I lived that era
Mhm.
out for about 15 years. And just a lot of the struggles of implementing even panelized walls was going back to the architects and the structural engineers and getting them bought into integrating. And we run into the same problem almost all the time, right? It's you want to implement it, and so then the general contractor's like, well, if the architect will do it, then we're okay. And then the
Right.
architect's saying, so then we start working the architect, and the architect's like, well, like let's get the plans developed, and if the general contractor wants it, then we'll be okay with it. And so it was just this constant back and forth, right? And carpenters and Division 5 and 9 guys that are traditionally doing the prefab panelized wall solutions, they weren't getting brought in for design assist or delegated design
Right.
at the end of the day. And so I kind of was like, well, shit, I see all these MVP guys getting this, and they're getting to the table early, like all these things. And I was like, man, I have to beat the system. And how am I going to do that? So I really developed a delegated design assist for load bearing light gauge panels. And I started working the structural engineers, and I started working the
Mhm.
design build pursuits and progressive design build. And I had to understand past the design bid build scenarios and how to, because that's really what we were doing. We were just trying to convert traditionally, designed projects into prefab.
Right.
And so it was ass backwards, right? Like we all know that now, but over the past 20 years, that wasn't the case. And
Right.
so it was really exciting because I had to start something from scratch, and start to build what would the conditions look like for a design assist. And we weren't a structural engineer, and so you're using somebody else and then bringing yourself in, and creating really targeted value designs for these prefabricated products and schedule, analyses before there was even a schedule created.
Right.
And it was really cutting edge and exciting, which ultimately led to a lot of success for me with one architect specifically. And I kind of really became his guy. And there was a proprietary system out there on a load bearing solution that was trying to go public. And, they were advancing across the nation. And, I was kind of brought in as well, shit, this guy knows his stuff. He can value engineer to that kind of stuff because I had that experience back from when I was doing the trusses and things like that. So I was like, man, they're using too much tube steel. They're doing this. They're trying to make it easy for them in the factory. They only want this
Right.
floor system. They really weren't looking at the critical paths and trying to come up with solutions for projects. And so this architect really just fell in love with me.
Mhm.
Well, he got connected with another architecture firm that wanted to open up a prefabricated volumetric and pod manufacturing facility. And so him as an architect in the industry, so much respect for him. And I know he's kind of retired now and out, but man, it was really cool for me because I got that phone call and I was 40 at the time. I'm 46 now. And he's like, hey dude, I want you to come join me, man. I want you to be the second hand guy. Cause like I need somebody who can build this and do this. But it was a
Mhm.
big shift for me because I built my whole career on Division 5 and 9, man. And so now I was like, I'm about to get into pods, which means I'm in finishes and I'm in MEPs. And man, do I want to reinvent myself? But really, ironically, by that time, Ryan, like FrameCAD was like pushing like crazy, right? They were
Right.
out selling roll formers to everybody to get into load bearing light gauge, which that's a good thing, right? It's a good, not just them specifically, but the fact that panelized walls was becoming more like a commodity is great to know that the industry was embracing some form of prefabrication in such a way that so many people wanted to figure out how they can get involved with that.
Right.
Um, and so that was really this pivotal moment at 40 to say, well, man, I can sit here and kind of coast into the division 5 and 9, panelized wall world. Or I can actually like push myself and go into learning, new trades and new solutions. And sure enough, I did, right? That's where I ended up.
Hmm.
And it was a phenomenal run. It fucking unfortunately started COVID, right? Like literally, I accepted the job in January and March, COVID hit. And it
Yeah.
was like, holy shit. I remember getting a phone call from the CEO of this architecture firm saying, did we just fuck up? And I'm thinking, did I just fuck up? Like, do I need to go back to the drywall industry? And am I even going to get a job because of COVID? And
Right.
he said, man, if this doesn't work, it's not going to work for anything or anybody, right? Like at the end of the day, it'll all go out of business if like not just prefab, but either the world's going to move on or it won't. And so they stuck to it. And man, dude, it was an amazing run. It
Hmm.
just it really was. And man, we were pushing out before it was all said and done, roughly about 50 bathroom pods every 2 weeks once the line had kind of started.
Hmm.
And I kind of pushed that really long story to kind of go back into where I really started and how I got into construction and how I got into prefab because it was the internet era of the boom and it was like I saw what I was capable of doing as an 18-year-old and looking at adults that didn't want to embrace internet. They were like, no, 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 this is a fad. It's not gonna last.
Right.
And I've always reminded myself, whether it's the new app or whether it's a new prefabricated product into the industry, to be like, man, I don't want to be that guy. I really want to live every day that I can, especially in the industry. And sometimes I regretted going into construction because I thought I was gonna, be this big chief technology officer at a big corporation in California when I was a teenager, and but
Hmm.
now that I'm here, I realize, and not that those people don't have impact, but I found my impact and being 20 plus years in and being, even here at Integrity Built, who, primarily was a, division 5 and 9 specialty subcontractor and their CEO wanted to truly embrace prefab. And so got into panelized walls and exterior bypass panels and bathroom pods. Like you don't see very many quote unquote, specialty subcontractors embracing that much of the trade in
Right.
prefabrication. And it might seem like, we are, kind of like a jack of all trades, but we're not because the way I look at it is all of those items revolve around the walls, right? And
Hmm.
and so whether it was like, the company that I was with previously before here, whether you're prefabricating just this section of the wall or putting all those walls together, it with finishes on the inside, it
Right.
ultimately does revolve around the success of integrating as much as we possibly can and kind of moving in. So man, I'll stop there because man, my story is long for 20 plus years, man. But it is exciting, man, to be where I'm at.
This episode of Activating Curiosity is brought to you by Overcast Innovations, architects, designers. Have you ever conducted a project walkthrough, looked up at the ceiling, and wondered, when did that decision get made? Not because it was necessarily wrong, but because it wasn't your original design. Most have experienced that moment. Somewhere between design, coordination, procurement, and installation, decisions get made that shape a space. The question is whether design could have been preserved if questions were asked and answered earlier in the process. Overcast Innovations is helping project teams rethink how building systems are coordinated by bringing key decisions forward and reducing complexity before work reaches the field. Because protecting design starts long before installation ever begins. Learn more at overcastinnovations.com. Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad you shared it because we all have a path that we've taken. And I heard, these are the parts that I heard kind of get you into in today's world, which we're both kind of in that Gen X, I'm a Gen
Yeah.
Xer, and we're used to the technology accelerating at a rapid pace through our life and seeing constant change. Well, you might have wanted to be that CTO But the realistic side of it is this convergence of all things really coming into the construction industry. So technology shifting through our careers,
Mm,
what you saw, in the factories to, how they were using technology and getting things sort of engineered through that piece. That's sort of where I started with direct digital manufacturing and then getting into architecture and transitioning from architecture into prefab. It's all, your story is one where it's like, hey, I didn't just say I needed to be one thing. It was like the world was going to evolve and so was
mm,
I going to evolve, which I think is, a tremendous, attribute to have where you don't get stuck
yeah.
when things are constantly shifting. Because you mentioned a lot of great things. This gets into, the meat of the conversation, which is that problem that you're aiming to solve. And I know for you, Josh, like, if when you started in the technology, you described everything you went through, and you even started getting into some of the things we'll get to deeper in this conversation. But as you got into the prefab side and taking that technology piece towards all the things you were discussing, the integration piece, working with architects, trying to understand their mindsets, talk about that problem that you're really aiming to solve personally, but also as a company.
Yeah. Oh man. It is a good and deep question for sure. In the essence that integration is really the key. And that is the biggest problem that I feel that we are all trying to solve. And especially within the prefabrication, sector as a whole. I still feel that our delivery models of construction fail us often. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, construction. I'll remember the first time I learned about IPD and even like an IPD light, which is very similar to like a progressive design build
Right.
solution. And I said to myself, okay, shit, here we go. This is something that allows us to look at how we can deliver this project without looking at it like, hey, no, this was their fault. No, this was their fault. I'm gonna sue you. You're gonna sue me. Like it gave me hope that we would progress and
Right.
push teams together to actively come together to solve problems. And it's like in construction, like anything else. Like usually when people find the right teams of designers, builders, subcontractors, regardless of whether what the delivery method is called, it can even be design bid build. I'm just being honest. I can
Right.
look back on my career and find some design bid build projects that went prefab. They might have run some of the best that we ever had. Why? Because the team collectively came together and said, we want to do something fucking epic here and
Hmm.
we're going to work together. The designer is going to say, these are going to be my constraints. And the general contractor is going to push their subs to do this. And how can we integrate here? And how can we do pull planning to really lean this thing out and smush the schedule down? And what can you do over here with this time? And then before you know it, you have all these different solutions and the project is just it's killing it, right? And it's crazy because I think too often that man, and it's hard, right? Because we live in capitalism, right? We're not,
Yeah.
we're here to make money, and I think I think some of the hard parts about a lot of our industry as a whole, because sometimes we're taking money from this guy's pocket, and this guy's
Hmm.
pocket, and then they don't want to do things anymore the way that they did because it's like, okay, well, shit, we all have money to be made. We're not I tell our team members often, we're not a nonprofit organization, right? Like we can't give away services for free. We
Right.
can't sit on design meetings, endlessly without having, real impact, right? And that impact should come back to how do we manufacture our products better inside, the factory with DFMA solutions and things like that. And so to just sit on calls to sit on calls or something like that. And so I would say we still have a lot of work to do. One of the
Hmm.
big things that I'm always constantly trying to do is to educate, just to be honest.
Yeah.
I think early on in my career, again, kind of going back to almost the capitalistic, I was young and I was about me. I was
Hmm.
seeking after my glory and everything that I could do to make myself better and my name better. And, I love it. My son's football, man, he's O line. And man, that is one of the most humbling positions. Like the running backs get all the credit, the quarterbacks get the credit, the wide
Yeah.
receivers. And man, we went to playoffs and dude, my son is fucking stoked, man. He is happy. He's sophomore. He's, varsity, and he is just crushing it. But he has no desire. It's all about the team for him. And unfortunately for me, I wanted to be the D end that had the sacks in high school, and I wanted to get the praise and the tight end, and I didn't realize that until I was about halfway through my career, that and
Hmm.
actually all these secrets that made me successful, because I was extremely successful early, was like, gosh, if I would actually just share this stuff out, it like everyone can be successful.
Right.
And it's like we keep a lot of these secrets, some I feel like in prefab. And I'd say what's been really exciting over the past, honestly, I feel like it's only been the past 5 years, even to where like I remember when three of the other bathroom pod manufacturers, we all kind of came together about 5 years ago and said, as executives, and said, can I tour your plant? Can I tour your plant? Can we just sit together and talk about what's going wrong with all of us and what's going right, how we can impact the industry better so that, like the next pod company doesn't go out of business.
Right.
That we don't need that in the industry because that happens too often. And we're all fighting over the same things because the industry hasn't embraced it
Hmm.
enough. And kind of lastly, I would say outside of the education that, and a buddy of mine, Ron, I'm really proud of this dude. He's a little bit older than me, and you need to get him on your podcast too. And he teaches a class there at ASU out of Phoenix, and he came and had me teach a class, and I've done that before for structural engineering firms. I've done it actually at structural engineering school in Cleveland, Ohio. BYU has reached out for their architecture school and had me come in and like do a prefab lesson because and that's the sad part. And what I loved about what Ron did for ASU was he actually created a class for prefab. It
Yeah.
wasn't a breakout session in project management 101. It wasn't like an architectural, like it was a legitimate class that was a part of the degree program. And it's like you start to see from the colleges, and I've talked to so many, people that are coming out of, solid schools like A&M's construction management school out of Texas that they don't dive into this industry enough.
Right.
It's almost like a field trip, and it's like, okay, this is prefab and you got 2 hours on it and it's out. And it's like, if this is the future, why don't we have a whole program dedicated to prefab?
Hmm.
Like you talk, like going back to like even the CTO, I wasn't even thinking about that, but like they had to develop degrees for, to eventually get to, chief technology officers and what's this degree plan look like. We aren't even thinking about that on the prefab
No.
level. The,
No.
the the trade schools aren't even thinking about that level. How do we teach inside trade school, even for carpenters, electricians, or plumbers, such a way that they know how to read plans so that they can see prefab and not be scared of it and say, oh, okay, this is what my integration looks like.
Yeah.
And we have to go backwards on some of that stuff. And so as I get older, I'd say I'm more excited about it's less about me and my name and my legacy and actually making more impact to leave something behind,
Hmm.
hopefully, for the next generations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you're human, so that when you're young, that personal side is
Yeah.
it is an important part of who we are because we believe
Yeah.
it becomes our identity. Like you're going to go
Yeah.
become this, so that
That is so true.
your job is your identity, and when that
So true.
shifts, you're like, oh, I just lost a piece to myself, which is change.
Mm,
But you said, I love the educational piece, but as you got went through that those thoughts, it was hitting me that one, I say this routinely. We do a terrible job in this industry on the education side. We treat it
mhm.
as if a 1 hour CEU is like, that's how we're taught. That's how we learn. We check a box, we move on. We go to a job site, we go to a factory, we tour it. That's just piquing curiosity. That isn't learning
Mm,
something new. That isn't understanding that the first time you do it, you're going to suck. Like
yeah, that's so true.
all of those things. And when it comes to offsite and prefabrication, like I don't know, I keep having these conversations, like thinking about architecture school, and we took a class called Means and Methods. Well, everything means and methods is what the contractor was responsible for, and we weren't supposed to really be touching it, and we just get to cover ourselves by saying, hey, that's means and methods. Well, the
Yeah.
reality is, as you said, methods of construction is one area, and with the
Mhm.
levels of prefab that you're discussing, from single trade to a multi-trade solution, and tying that in with a delivery model that is also potentially new,
Yeah.
that somebody hasn't seen. This is where our minds like, well, you're not going to learn it in a classroom. It is going to be
Hmm.
something that you're going to have to explore. You're going to have to test. You're
Yeah.
the capitalist side. We want to make money, right? We all want to make money, and every offsite group is like, we're worried the factories aren't going to make it. We're worried that they won't be around when the project comes. All of the risks, all of those things start to come through our mindset, which, gets us into the next really piece, which is those obstacles and barriers. They just constantly are
Mm,
coming up for us in our life. And I know I've been around and I spent most of my time in prefabrication training. Like,
yeah.
it's just like you said, it's that educational piece of like, this will be new. How do you need to think about a delivery model? That design assist piece that you were discussing. It, you know, I you mentioned some of the obstacles and some of those barriers. Um, you've been in it 20 years. I've been in it 20 plus years. They're not changing. like,
No.
like I don't know how you feel about this, Josh, but they're human. They're the human piece. It's not the solution. It's not the technology. It's not any of these other things. It's like, how have you started to look at how you're addressing, as you said, this educational piece, this human side of that change when these obstacles are coming up?
Yeah, that's good. As you were even just describing that out, I was thinking it's wild. I can remember back to when even the means and methods comment. Um, I remember being 20 years ago and pitching panelized wall to a general contractor and then thinking that, a panelized wall was the stupidest thing ever, right? Carpenters, it was 20 years ago, they're
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you need to build this in a factory for? Why would I pay shipping? Like, that's just stupid. Like, I remember all of those comments, right?
Yep.
And I think, you're so, man, you hit that on. And ironically, I think too often we feel that it's the next best software, it's the next best product, it's the next best company that can finally, break open the gates of prefab and allow it to be integrated,
Right.
more rapidly. But I think, and again, this I think goes back to what we all see on all the McKinsey reports and all that shit about, construction is so far behind on implementing, the most innovative things, compared to where every other market sector is. And that I think that actually goes back to the fact that what you just said, and I've really never put two and two together that way, but it's the humans that are stopping it. And we know
Mm-hmm.
that, right? We know that there's certain humans that embrace it and don't embrace it and stuff like that. But in general, I think because the industry has had this industry for so long, right, of building and the
Right.
way things are built and how do we mitigate risk and how do we move forward and do something that we know we're going to make money on? Well, because we've done it in the past. It's like you said, like how many companies are willing to invest and open up a prefabricated company if you were to tell them year one you're going to lose X? They'd be like, why would I do that? And the
Right.
irony is every other industry you're going to lose X for 3 years. Like
Yeah.
it's that's all of the startups in any other industry, even outside of construction. But what was exciting as I started to think about that is, as you mentioned that comment, was I have more excitement today than I had 10 years with it because there's actually human beings that are taking leadership and executive positions
Mm-hmm.
and they're willing to take the risks. The
Mm-hmm.
reason that they're willing to take those risks and embrace it and push it down the chains to say, no, you guys will implement X amount of prefab per projects per year is because they're like me and they actually saw it and didn't just have the class, like you said, the kind of a CYA. And they said, well, shit, I remember being a part of a project and it wasn't just like some field trip to where we saw this, and this happen. We
Mm-hmm.
saw this, and this. And they're wanting to change the companies for a positive, right? Like the new leaders that are coming into the architecture firms as principals, the new they're pushing to be on boards to say, well, how can we start to integrate these things into our designs? You start to see, the new mid to late 40s and 50s guys taking executive positions at general contractors and things like that.
Right.
They're saying, well, I don't want to just fit into the system of being overhead and being more like, CMAR without being CMAR. I really want to embrace this. And how can we actually diversify ourselves to go buy a piece of property and build this building and finance the building and
Mm-hmm.
build it faster than anybody else and go sell it. They don't want to just be the GCs, right?
Right.
And how are they doing that? Well, they got to beat the next guy. So they're thinking, well, I know prefab works. Let's look at it in this market sector. Let's do this. And
Mm-hmm.
they're taking those risks. And then you have guys like myself that are in the actual market sector of building it and doing it. And now we're getting to that level of prefab to be like, this has been a big problem for so long and we're not leaving. How do we then go work with all these people that in a weird way, we've been working with those humans that have kind of been the bystanders and building these relationships for
Right.
20 years. And now we're all at potentially, not all of us, but a lot of us are in positions that stayed in the industry, in the design, builder, and the trades and the prefabricating manufacturers, to where we believe in each other because we've kind of seen it historically through the past, and we can come collectively together and say, hey, let's go do some stuff together. So
Yeah.
weirdly, with what you just said, I am really excited, man, to see kind of what those next 10 years looks like.
Yeah.
Man, I'll be 55 by then. So hopefully hopefully we can have a podcast reunion and we're talking about this shit in a whole different way.
Yeah, 10 years from now that it's not 3 or 5% of the market, right,
Yeah.
for offsite. Well, I think and some of the things you just shared, thinking back towards, yes, the humans are who we're dealing with. And when I see plenty of leaders that are out there who are saying like, well, that technology didn't work, or this didn't help us, or I tried it and this didn't work. And I'm always like
Yeah.
thinking like, well, it's not the technology. What was your change management process? How were you dealing
Yeah.
with the humans? How did you understand how they felt during this piece? And
Yeah.
when I think about what you're talking about with like design assist and how approaching the educational piece towards, working through the human obstacles and barriers that are thrown up, that opportunity piece coming into view of like the next generation is stepping in as a leader. They're noticing a lot of these things that situations aren't the same as when they first got
Mhm.
into their careers. Not for you, not for me, not for them. That we don't have to keep using the same definition the
Yeah.
way we understand it or were first taught it. That we
Yeah.
can begin to reframe our mindset around it, like stuff's shifted,
Yeah.
things have changed, so therefore I can try this. And again, you're not going to be perfect that first time, so your first project might
Mhm.
lose some money. But you also described that other change that's happening, not just with industrialized construction, right? Like adding technology, robotics, and adding manufacturer or whatever. The This convergence with A&E firms,
Yeah.
construction firms, developers, and the way we're delivering projects now are completely shifting, which also some of the obstacles are insurance.
Yeah.
Become there, you got these things that are out there that come up, or the insurance to the financing piece and how cash flows through a building. So
Mhm.
again, I think about it all the time as like that's a human problem. Like,
Yeah.
again, we are writing the roles. We get to all
Yeah.
get together. And like you said, you're working with those other leaders. You're starting to have these dialogues. Like we're educating ourselves. And another thing that you said was so powerful was we like to hold on to that information. We feel like it's more
Mhm.
powerful if we don't let go of it, because if we let go of it, everyone else will have the answers. And
Mhm.
I was out doing training one time, and I think as I shifted, I was getting some flack, and he's out there giving away all of our secrets. And I'm like, I didn't create this. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
just educating on the delivery model. I'm just trying, like, to be honest, if the whole world spoke the same way, I don't think it would confuse architects from the beginning. Like, we got
Yeah.
off on very marketing driven sort of approach, and it was like no one understands what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
architects don't think that way, engineers don't. So anyway, it just you hit me some of those things you said hit me pretty hard and close to where, like, I've thought about it in my career. Like, yes, I do think we're in a huge opportunity right now because, this is the next question for you, Josh. Like, I know that it's just very important for us to figure this out as an industry, but I want to hear your perspective of what makes it so important for the construction industry as well as, society as a whole,
Yeah.
that we figure out this integration piece to get prefabrication more adopted. What makes it
Yeah.
so important to you? This episode of Activating Curiosity is brought to you by New Life Accounting. NLA is a construction specific firm that provides bookkeeping, controller, and advisory services to commercial contractors. So whether you are struggling to stay on top of that job costing, manage the cash flow, or make big picture investment decisions in your business, their team will help you find financial clarity. For our listeners, they're offering a free diagnostic service. That's a $500 value. This diagnostic takes a look at your current financials to help you identify areas for improvement. Plus, it's a perfect opportunity to get an expert's advice on those most pressing accounting questions. To get your diagnostic scheduled, start by booking an intro call through the link in the show notes and tell them Ryan sent you.
Well, man, that answer has changed over the years too. Immediately that comes to my mind is, again, it kind of goes back to the capitalistic side. That used to be the number one driver, right? Like, and it is still up there. I'm just being honest. Like what is the value proposition for an end user to get to market faster than a competitor or faster that they can hit revenue faster? Like that is almost the number one driver that, historically prefab has made people decide or push them over the edge to make the move to say yes to prefab, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being on a conference call for a prefabricated volumetric dialysis center in Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
And man, Canadians, we're on this meeting, and it was a huge architecture firm there in Canada that's also here stateside. And I'm going through the call, and I'm my this was probably maybe about 7 years ago. And I literally remember saying, okay, I think this isn't going to go forward. I'm going to hit them with the, hey, you can go make money faster. This is healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the number one easy way to get prefab integrated into healthcare in the United States is talk about how much money you're going to make because now your building is open faster. And I
Yeah.
said it. And Nova Scotia, the healthcare is free. They don't they don't they
It'll
don't
make
make
money.
money.
Right.
And they said, Josh, we have a problem. Like, we do not have enough dialysis centers. We have people driving 2 hours to get dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care about the money. And it was this gut check back then to be like, oh man, that's so true.
Yeah.
Like we can offer the world so much more and to help people in such a way. And I'm going somewhere with this because it's really evolved from that to where, you fast forward to when I started looking at the value propositions very differently, even in the stateside with healthcare, and those value propositions of actually talking to, doctors and physicians to say, think about how many more patients you could impact in your career, how many more lives you could actually save because you got open 3 months faster. Sure, the money, all that stuff
Yeah.
is there too here, even in the States, but you get the real people that care about what they can do, just for people. And man, it starts to change how sometimes they look at that. And you're starting to see that. And I love this about even architecture now, right? Like, it's ironic because you see some architecture firms who are going to extreme cookie cutter AI. How can I rinse, cycle, repeat, get this shit out? I just need to make the most money from it and push it out. And
Mm-hmm.
you have other architecture firms who are bracing, um, experiential design in such
Right.
a way that they want classrooms to be impacted on the way kids see
Mm-hmm.
lighting and realize the impact that the environments that we're in. It's like I'm honestly looking at this piece of desk behind me and thinking, gosh, the desk people, we got the interior designers. It looks might be cool hanging from a wall, but this isn't my normal office, but
Right.
I bet those are empty realistically, or they're fake storage because why? Those things were designed in an era that we had paper everything, right?
Yep.
And everything was going through that. We don't even look at desks and storage like we should. And what these like if I saved this money for my team member, I probably could have had this, and we have them in our newer offices. We have, desks that stand up so that their bodies, because they sit down all day long, right? If I didn't, think if somebody would have been thinking about that back then, and prefab's the exact same way, right? Whether it's, the modular and prefab furniture companies of the world and what they could
Right.
be doing to impact offices and spaces. But, lastly, this is what I've been harping on a lot lately with the subcontractors in whole, because a lot of them are the ones, because in reality, material is material. We all know that. How subcontractors make their money is labor. And so
Right.
they feel that by pulling labor off the job site, you're deplenishing the profits that they have. And I
Right.
agree with them. They are. And that's a big struggle, because people look at the bottom line and they say, well, I've been making this much and this much net for year after year after year after year. Why would I allow something new to come in and take that away from me? Because I can't make more money on the materials, right?
Right.
And we all have this human problem. Again, it goes back to there's not enough trades. We can't get enough people trained. Can't get enough people that want to get into the trades, right? Like, there's so much dynamic about not having people at job sites. And I go back to these trade partners, is we're in a lot of some of these design build meetings with just the executives, and I'm like, this is the guy, man, full circle, right? Who wanted to leave this fucking state so bad because I hated construction, because I was on a job site and how miserable it was. I
Right.
saw the guys having to do drugs to be awake because they're working 70 hours a week. The
Mm.
drugs to take away the pain in their body because they're doing so much with so little. And you look at their kids, their kids don't want anything to do with that lifestyle. Why? Because they've watched their parents' bodies, their minds, like all of that stuff go away. What if you could actually integrate prefab in such a way that you allowed humans to like work 40 hours and maybe get paid the same amount of money and
Yeah.
actually go home and not have to be, you know, half dead because their body is so broken because they had to pick so much up, because we did so much of it in industrialized construction that by the time it got it's kind of like the bagger scenario at like retail stores like Walmart when they introduced the cashierless checkouts. Oh, you're taking all their jobs away. And it's like, no, we're going to move bodies into helping,
Yeah.
associates and team members and stocking shelves so that you have product instead of getting to the register and being like, man, there was no milk in the back, right? Like we have this technology that can do that so that we can actually have the same amount of employees that impact your shopping experience better. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same with industrialized construction. One, it allows the people that are working in the factory, and I try to tell people this all the time, like when they're talking, doing like value propositions for safety, you're not moving the same safety hazards that you have in the job sites to the factory. It's so different, right? Like when you're
Mm-hmm.
building a bathroom, you're on a 6-foot ladder. We don't even have to have 12-foot ladders inside of the factory, right? That's
Right.
that's that's not something. So your fall, and it's ironic that I don't know how many prefab companies I've gone into, and you see them doing their safety talks, like their toolbox talks, before they start their shifts, and they're using traditional construction ones, and they're talking about stuff that doesn't even exist inside the factory, right? Like they're just, because that's what's been given to them, because that's the program that was created for construction. And
Yep.
you're talking about scaffolds in a factory that would never have a scaffold, right? Like we haven't even shifted to think of how do we make them safer, that don't even have the same safety problems at a job
Right.
site. And then how do we make those guys at the job site realize this is to your benefit? It's going to give you better life. You're going to live longer. You can actually enjoy this career because you can go onto a job site and get so much work done within 8 hours versus feeling like you have to come back and work Saturday in 12 hours because you're getting yelled at by the GC of keeping a schedule down, right? And it's like
Yeah.
it's more than just even the end user value impact. It's the job site itself that think about project managers. Like, how many GCs have, I mean, we've fucking seen it. You go to these big
Yeah.
jobs and their general conditions have to be so big because why? You're managing 1,000 people at a job site.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could peel back half of that overhead and allow those people to potentially go do other things, more projects, right? We could go
Yep.
change the world, right? Like that's
Yep.
the irony of not looking at industrialized construction in such a way that it really does have more human impact for
Yeah.
our own industry, not even just the end user side of it. Because the
Yeah.
end user side of it, we pitch that value proposition. I hear it all the time, but I don't really hear it so much on our side of the industry and what it can do for the, just the average worker all the way to the office staff, right? Less
Yeah.
stress.
Well, and I mean, it's powerful to think about it in that way, and it's something that I think about often too. Is yes, it's always about those end users, but as you said, like we're going back to the human piece of if this is brought in, it's taking my lunch away.
Mm,
And you said it too, is like they could probably be doing something else. It's
yeah.
not it's removing certain steps that we're all used to. And this is that
Yeah.
moment where, from our mindset again, we know this, we've learned it, it's valuable, it's gotten me here, and if I lose it, what do I have? And
Yeah.
our mind, and within the trades, but even as leaders in construction companies,
Mm,
creating a culture of change is around like, hey, that situation is now different. It doesn't mean that wasn't valuable and isn't still valuable. It's just that we need to stop reading from the same playbook
yeah.
because it's a different world. The
Yeah.
factory is a different world than the field, but the fact that our human minds will go to the easy button,
That's
which,
right.
which if you want to get real deep is called system 1 versus system 2. The we are made Our brains are made to function in an easy button mode. We are
Hmm.
created to build habits that remain us into a very fast pace.
Hmm.
When something new comes along and we got to slow down, we're uncomfortable. That's where
Mm,
the fears drive in. That's where the loss aversion starts happening of
yeah.
like, well, I will lose money. I will lose my job.
Hmm.
I won't exist. And that's not really true because you said this too. I call it the future labor force is not going to be the
Mm,
same size as it is today. And we
yeah.
cannot build enough infrastructure. So you getting into the viewpoint of the healthcare system and thinking about doctors, that is something that as from an architectural side, and I think about it's like, why am I designing this in the first place?
Yeah.
It's not to win an award. It's not to
Right.
check boxes with LEED. I'm doing it because on the other side of that are students learning, patients healing, whatever it is that's happening inside of that space. To the builders, it's there are these huge opportunities to go build other things that you can, what if you could take the same 100-person crew and go build
Yeah.
twice as much? Yes, the size of your contracts might change, but like suddenly our net profitability might all
Yeah.
start going up because we're getting off project sites faster. We're not, as you said, managing 1,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
you're seeing it with data centers even. Sorry,
yeah,
I mean, I thought
no,
you were
no,
done
go
with
ahead.
that thought. No, you're seeing it with data centers, right? Like I don't know how many phone calls I've gotten on the prefab side. We're chasing jobs, and they're like, "Look, some of these large, well-known name general contractors have taken all of these data centers because
Yeah,
there's so much profit in it right now." Well, guess what? They have zero staff to go pursue items like healthcare, right? The more complex jobs that might make less margins. Why? Because they just don't have the staff to be able to do both.
yeah,
What if, like, as you were describing that, I was literally thinking to myself, okay, like if they would embrace, and they do have some prefab in data centers. That's the irony.
right.
And I said this when I was at my last company, Dirt. I was advancing prefab, and I was on the stage, and I was like, you know what? It's ironic because they have the ability to do medical head walls, prefabricated with all finishes, everything within a 4-week lead time. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody.
No,
You know why?
nobody.
Because prefab head walls are released day in and day out, 6 to 8 months in advance and a design assist. So it doesn't matter if you can build them in 2 days. That there's no value proposition for somebody for a prefabricated head wall. And
Yeah,
so, like, what value proposition is that? And I literally stood on the stage. I said, until the day that the concrete guy has a 4-week lead time. The structural steel guy has a 4-week lead time, like to completion,
Yep.
right? The exterior skin guy has a 4-week lead time to completion, and the roofing guy has a 4-week lead time. Like, and when we can get the whole industry aligned, then specifically that company and that head wall, man, if head walls were 8-month lead times, that would be a big problem, right? You would say,
Yep.
oh my God, I only need the company that can get me a 2-week or 4-week lead time on head walls because my whole building is waiting for this.
Yeah.
And that has to systematically change. And ironically, we have to look at concrete differently. We have to look at slabs. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
son, I live in an old historic 1902 house, man. I love it, which is ironic for a guy that's all about prefab, right?
Right.
And it's pier and beam. And my son's like, Dad, like, why the hell does our house have this crawl space? Like, it's creepy compared to like, our friends in the newer, subdivisions and I'm like, construction changed. And I was like, honestly, I like this better. I think it's better for the house. It's better, but it's an old way of doing things. And someone found an easier and a faster way to do something. And I was like, unfortunately, they didn't innovate that enough to get there. But it's the same with slabs, right? We've got
Mm-hmm.
to increase prefab industrialized construction for all of the building components, not just the critical paths. That's the
Yeah.
problem too, is that too many of these construction companies I hear too often, well, like if you think bathroom pods, they're like, oh, well, bathrooms aren't a critical path. I'm only willing to do prefab for the structure or the exterior envelope because that's a critical path. And I tell them all the time, I was like, last time I checked, you need a CO. So your critical path is getting a CO. And the faster you can get that CO,
Right.
anything in the way of that is stopping you. And I was like, last time I checked too, there's more punch lists inside a bathroom than any other location in the area. So your superintendent might disagree with you on site and say that the bathrooms are probably a huge critical path, but in the office, you're not seeing it that way. And so
Yeah.
we have to look at all that stuff so differently, man.
Yeah. No, it's a great point because again, we tend to put conventional mindset and approach to building and just try to marry that with prefab or any kind of offsite solution. So going back into that critical path, it's like we I try to tell everybody is like we need to slow down the design process and speed up the build.
Yeah, that's right.
Like when we're rushing, like we rush the design, we break the packages up,
Yeah.
forcing the engineer to do this, the architect to do
Yeah.
that. No one's talking, nothing's coordinated. Some stuff's
Yep.
half designed, the rest of it's full design. Then we're like, why do we have so much problems in the field? And it's like, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? Um, so when it comes to this fabrication piece, and thinking about prefab, I'm in agreement. Like we have to, this is where it's the not, you got to rethink, but there's unlearning.
Yeah.
It's the gentleman or the person reading in the factory, like from verbatim, the
Yeah.
safety thing that's just like, wait, I'm literally not even, none of this makes any sense. No one's stopping him or her from reading it. And it's like,
Yeah.
what are we
Yeah.
doing? Again, the humans, we can find our agency in all of this and figure it out. Thinking about, the statement that you made on the stage, which goes back to that lead time piece, right?
Mhm.
Like, I know, I mean, like you at Dirt, I used to work for Dirt, and it was like, ever talked about the lead time, and I'm like, no one cares about the lead time because, again, if a door takes 12 weeks and you only got a 16-week TI, right? Like there's certain things that the way they're going to think about it. And to be honest, like our job is to get up into that integration piece anyway. So
Mhm.
we just need to get it to hit the site when it needs to hit the site, but we need the rest of the schedule to pull forward with us
Yes.
in order to get that end date shifted. So I'm glad you shared it because I think those that are working around prefabrication, think of it in that way. But for those who haven't worked with it, it isn't the same. So you should be
Yeah.
doing what you're talking about, which is we got to get everybody to sort of speed up, right? Everybody
Yeah.
in their lead times to how we're thinking about what we're producing and how we're producing it. So something else that just kind of got me thinking. Then it goes back to that educational piece that how we know it's a huge opportunity, but it's highly important that we're starting to figure this out because we can't get enough patient rooms.
Right.
Doctors want to see patients. There's not enough. We have a rural healthcare crisis in the States that's hitting, and I'm pretty sure it's everywhere, as you just said, up in Canada. Like 2 hours to go get dialysis, like that's a human problem.
Yeah.
That's not a built environment problem. It's a human problem to figure out how do we go build more environments in which people can be seen and be taken care of. Um, but when I'm hearing all these things, it's like there's the obstacles, there's the barriers. There is a huge cost
Yeah.
in that we just started getting into this, but there is a huge cost by not solving this problem, which is the patient who can't drive 2 hours to get dialysis because they can't drive, they don't have any family near them, they're located somewhere far away, or a project team, you can't hire enough staff to come in to build. Costs are not going down on construction
No.
because we figured out how to build traditionally. But I want to throw this back to you, Josh. Like, what else do you think this is costing? Not only the industry, but the
Mm,
whole the whole planet, because we're looking through a lens of what we've known to be true versus
yeah.
taking a step back and saying, like, this is a location I've never seen before. Like, what do
Yeah.
you think it's costing us?
Oh man, that's good. That's good. I think immediately when you started talking about that, I started thinking sustainability, right?
Hmm.
And again, man, that's probably opening up a huge can of worms for so many different people, right? On so many different levels. Right? Some people push the extreme envelope of sustainability. Some people think it's a crock of shit and there's no such thing. And then you have people in the middle that are trying to find advancement in ways to make the earth better and to our environments better. And so I'm thinking like realistically, even back to like my historic house. And I remember this room that I was remodeling. And of course there was drywall in it, right? And
Hmm.
1902 house didn't have any drywall in it. And we always talk about how many, pounds of drywall on remodels and stuff like that end up, into, all of the whole environment as a whole. But if you go backwards and you look at like shiplap, so I started pulling all that drywall off, right? And sure
Yeah.
enough, I found this gorgeous shiplap. And
Hmm.
I literally, as a builder, thought to myself, gosh, we've made drywall look sexy. I mean, we have. Like we figured out how to paint it and tile it, just all these things. But in reality, the product itself, um, somebody at that era, and I'll have now I'm really intrigued. I'm gonna have to go back and do some history on like actually when drywall was invented and how did it make its big shift and pull off into different sectors. But that's even the fact that we call like a division 5 and 9 sub a drywall subcontractor, right? We don't call
Yeah.
them framing like some people do, but in general, like we don't call them framing and insulation and like those are just some of the products. But if you really want to get technical, that's the drywall sub, that's the electrical sub, that's the mechanical sub, not the
Hmm.
wall sub. Ironically, it almost should be that if you were to think about that way. But we're not advancing even the products
Right.
that really even prefabricated solutions and industrialized. And that's where I'm going, like with the industrialized construction side. Think of the environments that we live in and the cancers and all of those things, truthfully, that
Hmm.
in industrialized construction could make huge impacts on life and the future as a whole, right? And energy efficiencies and all of those things that people bitch and complain. Like shit's not going to get cheaper. We know that. It's just
Nope.
not. Like all the bullshit around politics and this and that. It's that is just cyclical of riding these small waves to come down just a hair up, two up, down, one down. The way we make big drastic changes is through changing different dynamics. Like if we want to get into energy efficiency in
Hmm.
such a way that I'm not using, and again, this goes back to even my 1902 historic house. And it's hard for me sometimes because I don't want to change out. I have original single pane windows that with transom windows inside my house. And there's something historic and beautiful about that I
Hmm.
don't want to change it to an energy efficient. But gosh, if I did, I wouldn't be spending 4,000 kilowatts on my house every single month. I would probably be down to about 200. And so it's a catch 22, but in reality, I think we have to look at even the products that we have that we just use day in and day out. And
Yeah.
how do we make some impact changes that industrialized construction, because that's always been the the problem with even panelized walls. Everybody wants them finished. Well, drywall doesn't make it very far. The minute you paint it and put it on a truck, man, that thing is probably cracking. It's getting damaged along the way. Like, that's, just to me, honestly, like some of the things that we can do better. Because I
Yeah.
think it will have so much more impact, for humans, for lifestyles, for just the stuff that we have that's going to last maybe 100 more years. The fact that my shiplap's behind there, like we can come up with some newer product that has better sustainability, that is cheaper, that can be used in industrialized construction, that maybe we can now ship residential walls without feeling like we're sacrificing by putting FRP on it, and building
Right.
mobile homes. Like that's everybody wants a modular home. Like you think about FEMA and the California fires and the Hawaii fires and the Puerto Rico, like all of those things. But yet the only solution that we have is job site trailers, and cheap volumetric modular homes, because no one has found a way to make it cost effective with gooder products to get something that someone can live in, right? Like no one's
Yeah.
really advancing those things to where we don't have to put people up in FEMA trailers for 6 months while a traditional house is being built to replace the one that was destroyed, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's true that this goes back to our habit. Like we just,
Mm,
I've noticed before, it's like the idea is to take the same materials we've always used and we just put it into a different form when we call it a
yeah.
solution. And it's, the sustainability side. You touched on it. Like when we're talking about things that are sustainable, a lot of people will just throw it in a bucket of like climate or green initiatives. Well, those are important, but also like we don't want asbestos around us.
Yeah.
We don't need to be sitting and breathing in off gassing or VOCs, or we don't need drywall all the time around us. And it was
Yeah.
around 1915 drywall, and I think it took
Okay.
off in the mid 50s with the housing boom, because we had to build more.
Yeah.
The fast drywall install was quicker, but you you got me thinking a lot. Like this goes back to, again, like this language that we're used to, that we're all taught, and we know like the divisions, and people are called this and they're
Hmm.
called that. And something I worked on when I was in prefab was working in special construction section, of the division 13
Yeah.
was
13.
integrated assemblies to get those numbers
Yeah.
accepted by CSI, because I was like, look, multi-trade approach to build out is these are integrated pieces. It is it's a different delivery model than
Yeah.
just a trade kind of coming in. But you got me thinking, like we just get so, again, it goes back to, I think the obstacles, and this is just how I'm going to reframe this for myself too, is like I think sometimes we make the obstacles things that we just know, and those things we
Mm,
just hold on to, and we're like,
mm,
because we're always knowing this, we've always
yeah.
known it, we've always known it to be true, so it cannot change. And we
Yeah.
get stubborn as humans, and we get into the rut, which read some stories about train track sizes versus horse wagon wheel sizes versus space
Huh.
shuttles. Like engineers use the same measurement. I think it was like 4 feet 8.5 inches, 4 feet 6, or somewhere in there for that measurement. I'll have to do a fact check, but they just kept repeating it because it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's worked before, it's got to keep working. And it's like, well, in the cases that you're talking about, it's like we we as an industry can pause this for a second, and we can look at the delivery models, we can look at the methods, we can look at how we're learning it and digesting it, and how we're implementing it into our processes, how we're building scheduling. Because in the end, like the importance of solving it is there's a material change that we got to start thinking about. We
Yeah.
need material science to come into it. How do we use
Yeah.
AI, enough to like test some things? Because there's companies out there that are doing some great things with paint.
Yeah.
But when I think about what you just mentioned about your windows, you're in a house that's over a century old, right? It's
Yeah.
120 years plus, and there's components that you don't want to change because of the aesthetic of them.
Mhm.
And that's just where I get so frustrated by our industry, is like, go walk around Europe and look at the
Yeah.
buildings and look at what we're building today. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not gonna judge like, hey, you should have won an award for this or that, but like we're doing something wrong
Yeah.
when when we're not working as an industry between material science to building manufacturing to prefabrication to how we work as architects or engineers to builders to be the ones that are like, we don't have to repeat, we don't have to rinse and repeat specs, we don't have to
Yeah.
rinse and repeat materials, but we can engage and work together to understand like this gentleman shouldn't have to keep these windows in because of the aesthetics. We should be able to recreate things and
Yes,
have
replace
them
them that are efficient, but give the same aesthetic. Yeah.
same aesthetic without being so exorbitant, the cost being so custom.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so true.
but I'm just, it just gets me thinking back towards like how we started this journey of like prefabrication adoption, you know, is going to require the humans to engage in this process
Yeah.
alongside, yourself and others that are out there doing it.
Dude, let
That
me add one thing to that real fast, man. It made me think of a memory of history. And you were just talking about like my house, and I know so many people, and this is always a thing. Well, we want this to look sexy. Prefabrication is not that, right? Like we
Mhm.
want this building going to look like this, right? And they're grateful that there are some people doing that. And I remember hearing that a lot. Well, we don't want cookie cutter, okay? Like it has to be identical, right? I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be. And they're
Right.
like, what? And I was like, and so then I started like doing some historic, like, okay, like let me understand some construction history behind it. Like what is prefabrication anyway? Like that is a whole nother probably podcast if you've not done yet of who is defining the word prefab, modular, industrialized construction and what fits into those things. But the Flatiron building in downtown Manhattan,
Mhm.
okay, the code, and you were talking about like even just the things, the code was changed in like the late 1800s, the early 1900s that allowed buildings to over 20 stories to be built out of structural steel and not just masonry.
Right.
Previously to that, they were stuck to that. And the Flatiron building it's fucking iconic. It's gorgeous, right? Talk
Mhm.
about like the European buildings, right? We have so many across America that still fit that bill. But the cool thing about that building, if you go and study the history, is that was the fastest building built above 20 stories because off before the construction because of course no, everybody was fighting it. They didn't think the building was going to stand 10 years, let alone, and that building is still standing to this day. It's
Right.
curved, I mean it's gorgeous, like I mean it is an iconic building, but they pre-drilled the structural steel holes
Mhm.
off site in the columns and the beams so that the bolts so that they could lift it and put it in faster, and every floor was done every 2 weeks, and that was unheard of.
Mhm.
And it was like, that's prefab. Like in the early 1900s, and we know about the Sears catalog, most of us that are in the industry of the delivering homes, during that
Mhm.
time in trucks. But like, I told people, like, you don't have to look at prefab and modular industrialized construction as something like we can't do epic things and it has to be just this cheap thing. Like we can do stuff, like it might cost a little more, but
Right.
what do you get on that back end? And so I just wanted to add that at least for your audio listeners that like, man, don't also when you think prefab modular that you can't have something sexy and amazing. Like that's a misnomer.
Every project has them. The decisions nobody planned on making, a coordination issue surfaces, an RFI gets written, a field condition that changes the original approach. Most of the time, these aren't failures. They're simply the result of multiple systems and multiple trades trying to come together later in the process. That's one of the reasons this episode is sponsored by Overcast Innovations. Their team believes many of those coordination conversations should happen much earlier when project teams still have more flexibility, more options, and fewer constraints. By integrating building systems into a coordinated ceiling solution, they're helping reduce the complexity that often creates those last minute decisions in the first place. Learn more by visiting overcastinnovations.com. Yeah. No, I'm glad you added it because I do have that conversation all the time of like the naming. Like everyone's like, well, don't call it offsite, don't call it prefab, don't call it modular. And I'm like, look, man, there are I love that you said it, like with the steel. Most things that we deal with are prefabricated. Like we're not like we're putting them and connecting them, but the floor has the cushion on it
Yeah,
already
that's
on
right.
as a tile. Like that's technically a prefabricated
That's right.
tile, right? So it's how our brains relate it to something that we know. Again, I think like it just you mentioned trailers. People think of the word modular and they, the
Yeah.
modular industry, like if you think, look at an MBI and they're all out there fighting, like, well, we don't want it to look like a
Mm-mm.
trailer. It's like, you're the one that's telling it to look like a trailer in your own
Yeah,
head.
that's
Like,
right.
like again, situations have changed. The way we can manufacture codes are shifting. I
Yeah,
interviewed Kristen Slavin here a couple months ago about mass timber, and she was part of the
yeah,
group that helped change really the code, especially in Oregon, of like being able to go taller with mass timber. We humans in the design and construction industry can drive those change when we investigate it enough, when we open up our minds and look, through the curiosity lens of like what can be possible, as you just said with the Flatiron building, of like we're going to pre-drill. I mean, my career started in precast, and it started in precast because I lived one, you know, street away from a precast plant, and I saw it from an early age of like, holy cow, these entire panels are just leaving with the facades
yeah,
on them, and like how is that done? Um, and now seeing how that's even advanced, right? It's not the precasting piece that I grew up with is different than the precast that we're seeing today, with glass fiber reinforced to how they can fabricate it. So if we can just for our listeners, like we pause for a minute about who is defining prefabrication.
yeah,
If someone else other than yourself has told you something, go explore it.
yeah,
Go look and see what's possible, because additive manufacturing is now changing all of that as
yeah,
well, right? With companies that are, it- it- you know, with 3D printing, they're able to do a backup system with the facade piece. Like there's all
yeah.
kinds of different approaches to this, and the way we're addressing it. But anyway, I'm glad you added it, because now that I'm thinking about it moving forward, like you're out educating, you're shifting into this new role now here with Integrity Built. You you've been educating your whole career. You've been educating yourself. You've been thinking, even in our conversation, about things that you're reflecting on. Josh, what does success look like to you for the
Mm,
industry, for yourself? You mentioned the word legacy. What do you think
mm,
success looks like for that industry if we adopt more prefabrication?
mm. I think success looks like redeeming the guinea pig animal. Like, I don't know how many times in my career I've heard, "I don't wanna be the guinea pig. I don't wanna be the guinea pig." When this new thing has been tested, tried, and true, then come back to me, right? Like, I don't wanna be the guinea pig. And, I think if we can get to the point to where it's like the joke, like, or the meme when you see, like, pigs fly and then there's, like, wings and shit like that. It's like, I swear our industry of construction is like, I don't wanna be the guinea pig. And I think success for me, and leaving a legacy behind is that it's advanced in such a way that, I tell my kids this and, a lot of good friends and including my team members, when you're up against a difficult decision in life, whatever that may be, and for the people listening that are builders and they're having to decide whether they want to integrate prefab, whether it's an owner, whether he's getting pitched by a general contractor who said they will, but they've never seen it before, and he might have to pay a premium, but he's at risk, or a designer that might have some more hours because they've never done it before. Uh, the same application applies that when you have two decisions that you have to make in life, man, I've always said this, it's always the harder one that is the right one.
Mhm.
Always. At the end of the day, in your mind, if it's this, and I'll use our example at the end of the day, a traditional or a prefabricated solution, the traditional is always the easier one. Why?
Mhm.
Because it's proven, they're gonna stand behind it because of XYZ of these many years of history, things like that. Like I would love for a day that prefab and industrialized construction becomes this, and we have something else that we can talk about that
Yeah.
becomes the harder decision. Oh my God, like, I have no idea what that is. Like, like, in a weird way, like, that's weird to think that right now we're currently limited to 2 options, traditional and prefab is the harder decision, and which usually, again, I almost say 9 times out of 10, it's always the right decision,
Hmm.
because if it's harder, it means it's going to push us to be successful. It's going to push us out of our minds and out of our current state. And I go back to why I made the decision of leaving just a Division 5 and 9 and Division 5 prefab to
Hmm.
moving into full pods and volumetric. That was a hard decision for me, but I knew it was the right decision. I knew I was going to have to work harder. I knew I was going to have to learn again. But I'm so grateful for it because I am who I am today because of that, and I can have success. But it's like, what is that next thing? I don't know, but man, success in my mind is when I can look and see 2 options and prefab becomes the easy option.
Hmm.
And whatever this next thing is on this side becomes the harder one, man. I hope I'm around the industry long enough and old enough that I can be excited to say, fuck it, I might be 70, but let's go get it. I'll go after the harder one, man. I hope I'm still around.
Yeah. Well, I hope you are as well. I think that's, I mean, it's powerful reflection on it because again, it's understanding your own humanity of like choice. I've got two
Yeah.
choices sitting here, and you know, we don't like to have a choice made for us, and
Yeah.
we don't like to have too many options to be able to make a choice because we waver on it. But you describe something of like, hey, I got to make a choice
Mm,
to dive into something that I knew was going to be more difficult. I paused. I gave myself time to reflect on it, to understand like I'm going to be learning something new on this journey. And we've talked about a lot in our conversation, but like, yeah, that new thing is going to be uncomfortable. But what Josh just said was maybe we're not sure what the next thing is
mm,
because we haven't made it past this. And
yeah.
there are enabling things, like there are steps that we have to take to learn from it in order to be able to see to the next step and to kind of understand what that is. I think about it in pharmaceuticals to science, like just because it was the wrong answer that they didn't find the answer doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
wrong, right?
Yeah.
They didn't find it through that additive
Yeah.
solution that they were providing, but now they know that that didn't work. So that gets to go
Yeah.
on the side of like, okay, we tested it. But I think in our industry, because of that risk piece, the low margins, like we tend to say, like, we just have to stay this course because that's the only way we can stay in business. And it's like, again, when will the time come when you trust yourself and your team enough
Mm,
and the abilities and the talent that you created to try this next thing so that it starts to show other doors that you might be able
yeah.
to go through? So I'm glad you kind of stated it that way because I just think that we we feel it as humans. We might even beat ourselves up, but we
Yeah.
will tend to just stay there because again, like you said, it just is easier.
Yeah.
And renaming, I love the way you stated it, just kind of who's defining these things for you.
Yeah.
If it's not you, then okay, you didn't make the choice. Someone else has made it for you.
Yeah.
So Josh, I've appreciated all of the things that you've shared and everything that we've discussed. Before we wrap up, if someone's been listening and they are curious, like what's some next steps you think they should take? What's some other things that you think they should dive into?
Well, that's good. Man, hey, hit first and foremost, be a part of even the stuff that we disagree with. Look, I from a guy that went to World of Modular way back in the day, and I said, man, most of these companies are doing, job site trailers and modular homes. Man, there was guys in there that I said, no, these some of these guys are commercial construction, prefab, and modular people, and not that there's anything wrong with me because MBI, man, they were doing their thing before commercial construction decided they really want to advance into
R-
this
Right.
market sector, right? And so, get engaged with different entities that are doing different things to learn, right? Like it takes people like us that are pushing boundaries and again doing the harder things. Easier to potentially just go start something back up. I'm a huge historian esque, and I remember like Martin Luther and the Reformation and some of that era, of Christianity and Catholicism and all that. But it was like, man, he wanted to just talk about things internally,
Yeah.
not necessarily divide, right? And I think too often that's what we're trying to do in our industry. We're sometimes we're just trying to divide and create the next thing instead of just sticking with it and us coming together. And so, man, get involved with your local chapters of whatever builder associations that you have. The DBIA institution, man, get involved with those things and be a part of conversations. Don't just sit back. I'm tired of like being in panels where people, man, God, if you're listening, even if you're like a me, don't sit on fucking panels anymore and give the same answers all over again. Like let's
Right.
let's talk about some deep shit together. Let's actually sit down with a real round table that isn't just trying to do a sales pitch, and all of us actually come together and fucking build something amazing that everybody looks at us and says, how did they do that? Well, we fucking came together and we decided to change the status quo in such a way that we decided to talk it through, right?
Yeah.
So I think getting involved with as many of the associations, but involvement to me means making impact in it, not just sitting on the sidelines. Not that's like we don't need any more cheerleaders, right? We don't need any more instigators from the sidelines. We have plenty of those people out there wanting to see us succeed so they can jump on the bandwagon or talk shit about us so that we can't succeed or make us afraid to try to go after it. We
Yeah.
need people to like come us alongside and wrap their arms around us and go do it together. That's really what we need. And so I would just
Yeah.
encourage people to get involved as best as they can locally. And then of course, educate themselves, man. History is cyclical. It comes and it goes. And yes, it has a new nuance to it, but the next drywall is out there. We just don't know what it is yet. And so it's something that's going to cover a wall and it'll have a name. I don't know what that is eventually down the road, but it's out there. It's
Right.
cyclical. Something will be there. So be a part of that change. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important place to kind of land, is that it is their involvement. I say it a lot of times, like there's 8 to 10 million of us in this industry. Like you don't have to take that many. You're not taking 10 million steps by yourself. Just go take that first
Yeah.
one, get involved, as you're saying, Josh, have those conversations. Something else I think you said is powerful is like, we got to get out of this judgmental society where we're throwing each other under the bus in this industry. It's like we can learn from every single one of them. We all like to blame the superintendents for this or that, but like
Yeah.
they are human. They're going through things.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a paycheck. Everyone has their life challenges and issues. Like we all face it. But by going and seeing that human on the other side of it, right, as you're describing, and sitting not on a panel, but like at a round table,
Yeah.
or just get a group of people together around, in your area, and just start
Yeah.
having conversations. You don't have to be right. They don't have to be wrong. You don't
Yep.
have to pick sides. You can just learn. You can
Yeah.
just be curious. So, Josh, thank you so much for
You
being
bet,
on
man.
Activating Curiosity. I really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, I hope in 10 years we can do a rehash and see how this played out and how it
Yeah.
landed. But
Yeah.
I
That's right.
appreciate the time. Thanks for being on.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the episode with Josh Mensinger of Integrity Built. And it's a newer role for him, a transition, but I love the conversation with him. His background coming from the technology side, thinking that's the direction he wanted to go, and then ending up getting into some of the trades and working through those and seeing how construction was actually evolving or not evolving from his perspective, and landing into this world of prefabrication, offsite construction, and not just looking at it from a view of the one involved in it. His whole career has been looking at it from a standpoint of those accepting it, those willing to integrate it into their designs as an architect or an engineer, but also thinking about it from the end user's perspective, and just being able to have a conversation with someone to kind of help all of you listeners who maybe haven't worked with prefabrication or have, to pause for a minute and just think about some of the things that were discussed. Where did we learn the definition of offsite construction or prefabrication or industrialized construction? Where are we getting confused and who's defining that for us? And how can we begin to look at those things that whether we're in the trades, we're the site superintendent, or we're the architect and the engineer on the project, or we're the developer, like what our role is going to be as we look at construction in the future and as we look at bringing offsite solutions, whether it's single trade or multi-trade solutions into projects, that we're assessing the methods of construction. We're assessing the delivery models. We're understanding that situations have changed from our traditional means and methods and the way we've thought about it to our processes and how we work within firms to the questions we're asking. Like all of these things are opportunities. As humans, we want to look at the obstacles and we want to think that we can't move them. But by asking questions, getting involved, as Josh mentioned, just getting out and just having conversations where we're not judging one another's viewpoints. We're just testing what we've known and have always known against what might be possible to take that next step, see more doors of opportunities sort of in front of us to continue to advance the industry and solve some of those problems that we have right now, which is a shrinking labor force that can't address the needs of the built environment around us. So I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. We're passionate about it. I'm wishing Josh the best of luck in his new role. And I know he'll do great things. And I know he's going to continue to educate himself. I know he's going to continue to educate others as it relates to offsite construction, offsite fabrication. I hope that you're able to continue to evaluate those things that you just feel like aren't right, and you just want to make sure that you're thinking about it differently, and you're starting to look at new opportunities to advance the industry, and leaving your own legacy behind as you begin to think about your next steps in your career. So until next time, I hope you're continue to activate your curiosity as well as activating curiosity within others. The Activating Curiosity podcast is brought to you by Connective Consulting Group and Connective Coaching, part of the Curiosity Building Experiences. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a conversation. Share the podcast with your network and help us bring more curiosity into the construction industry. Interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor? Visit us at activatingcuriosity.com for more details. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity. One of the themes that keeps showing up in conversations across the AEC industry is this. Many of our biggest challenges don't start in the field. They start much earlier. The farther decisions travel through a project before teams coordinate around them, the harder they become to change. That's why Overcast Innovations is focused on bringing architects, engineers, contractors, and owners together earlier around integrated building solutions. Because when coordination improves earlier in the process, teams spend less time reacting and more time delivering on the original vision. Overcast Innovations believes stagnation is the enemy of innovation. And sometimes innovation starts by simply asking the right question sooner. Learn more at overcastinnovations.com.